Welcome back. I'm Ron, the professor. Today we're going to talk about gumbo and why gumbo is the perfect representation of what the United States of America is supposed to be. Now, there are plenty of cities around the U.S. that stake claim to dishes that truly are theirs, but I don't think any of them truly come close to gumbo. Gumbo also has an amazingly long history here in the United States. But let's start with the name gumbo. Gumbo comes from the word king gumbo, which is a West African word for okra. And a majority of the enslaved people, specifically New Orleans, came from Nigeria, Angola, and Ghana. And two of the crops they brought with them was okra and rice, which are key components to gumbo. So the original gumbo truly was just a vegetable stew that was thickened with okra, and typically served with rice or bread. But the story and the dish don't stop there. Next we bring in the Native Americans. Their addition to this soup was filé powder, which is a powder that comes from drying and grinding sassafras leaves. And this is where the dish truly starts to evolve. You have two very distinct cultures taking this one base, the vegetable stew thickened with okra, and each community is adding their own flair to it. The natives brought in filé powder, adding that flavor at the end. But then they're also using wild game, fish, and the enslaved people were using whatever they could. Oysters, shrimp, the birth of the seafood gumbo. Most common was still the vegetable gumbo, thickened with okra. Now enter the next culture to add their flair to the gumbo, the Acadian people. Now the Acadian people hailed from northern Canada, where they were driven out by the English. And they were in a mix of indigenous and French people, who were driven down to New Orleans. And even there they were shunned, being driven to the outskirts of towns, to the bayous, the swamps. And the people in the city took their name, the Acadians, and shortened it as almost a slur, calling them Cajuns. But what they brought to the gumbo is very important to the modern gumbo. Roux, a slow-cooked, dark roux. One of, if not the only soup that is truly flavored using a dark roux. The roux isn't just there to thicken, it's there to truly intensify the flavor of the dish. And our last main culture that really put their influence into what we know as gumbo today are the Spanish. The Spanish controlled Louisiana in 1762, and they brought in cooking techniques like sofrito, a mixture of onions, garlic, and chilies. And between 1700 and 1800, this is where we truly start to get what we know as gumbo today. Southern Louisiana, specifically New Orleans, was an incredibly rich and diverse group of people living within the borders. And with so many cultures within the city, food really started to melt together, became a melting pot. And because enslaved people were typically in charge of cooking all the meals, all the ingredients from all the cultures started blending into the kitchen to create what we would call a proto-gumbo. And the early versions came in three styles. You have the okra-based gumbo, which was thickened and flavored with okra and vegetables. Then you had soups that were thickened and flavored with filé. And last but not least, you had the roux-based stews of the Acadian people. And this is a dish of adaptation. The ingredients that were used in the first proto-gumbos came in many varieties, but being in Louisiana, things changed. The lack of some old world ingredients, such as bread, made it so that rice could move its way in to become the starch component of gumbo. Then we have the usage of the native shellfish and fish, and the local wild game replaced the European livestock. This dish truly became a practical way to use any and all local ingredients. From the research I've done, the very first written copy of gumbo comes from 1803. And these are all documents that pertain to the Louisiana Purchase. And in these documents, it's referring to okra and okra-based stews. Now we get to 1820, where what we know as gumbo today really starts to take hold in Louisiana. In this era, the dish really gets defined. It composes of four main ingredients. You have to have your roux base, the holy trinity of vegetables, okra, and filé powder. Those are the four main staples that created gumbo like we know it today. And recipes all over New Orleans started popping up. Everyone putting their own little flair on it. People who were closer to the water using a lot more shellfish. People who were deeper in the country using more wild game. And unlike today, it was hyper seasonal because you had to be. So when it was duck season and ducks were migrating, everyone had duck gumbo. Now we've reached the 1850s. where we have two distinct families of gumbo. We've got the Creole gumbo and the Cajun gumbo. Now, at the time, Creole gumbo had the addition of tomatoes, the Spanish influence. It had a much wider variety of seafoods, including shrimp, oysters, mussels, whatever they could get, along with andouille or other smoked sausages, and a darker, richer roux. This version was much more cosmopolitan and featured on many wealthy plantation tables. Then you have the Cajun gumbo, which is more rural Acadian people. And this is where you get your chicken gumbos, your duck gumbos, wild game. They would also use smoked sausage, typically tasso ham or andouille if they could get it. The Cajun version also had less tomato or even no tomato at all, and had a much darker roux than its Creole cousin. Even though I did talk about the original cultures that created the base for gumbo, there's one more culture that slipped in at the end: the Germans. The German immigrants brought in their love of charcuterie, smoked meats, smoked sausages, and smoked meats, much like andouille, became a central part of making gumbo in the early 19th century. Now we're in the 1880s, post-Civil War. This is when we first start getting actual written recipes in cookbooks that are appearing all over the US. From my research, I found one book from 1885 called the Creole Cookery Book. And this book had several versions of gumbo, including a roux-based one, a seafood one, a okra thickened one, and a filé base. Around that same time, there was another cookbook, La Cuisine Creole, which also had multiple versions of gumbo in it. Now, gumbo truly is a symbol of Louisiana, a very powerful symbol representing the unique cultural background of Louisiana, a true cultural melting pot. It also represented resilience and hospitality, which New Orleans is known for. And now we're finally in the 20th century. This is when the dark roux revolution starts. Before this point, dark roux was a staple in the mid to late 1800s. You needed to have a dark roux for your gumbo. In the early 20th century, we really start to see that dark chocolate roux become the staple of gumbo. And people will say that you're wrong if you do not use a dark chocolate roux for your gumbo. That is correct for the modern standard of gumbo. But if we really want to talk about the origin of gumbo, it would not have been a dark chocolate roux. This is where we start to standardize the ingredients that are used for true gumbo. This one I believe wholeheartedly. The only sausage you should be using for a gumbo is andouille. It is the gumbo sausage. It is perfect for making gumbo. It is a coarsely ground smoked sausage. It's very fatty and has a really nice meaty bite to it. Andouille started becoming such a staple that many charcuterie houses started producing hundreds and hundreds of pounds of this one sausage so that people around the city could make their gumbos. And we have one more slight split. You have the chicken gumbo, and you have seafood gumbo. You'll almost never see chicken and seafood in the same gumbo together. They are kept separate. And in 2004, gumbo was seen as the official cuisine of Louisiana. That's how deep the roots on gumbo go in Louisiana. It became the official cuisine of the entire state. In 2018, UNESCO designation, the cultural significance of Louisiana gumbo was recognized internationally when the gumbo family meal tradition was added to the Louisiana Folk Life Center's Registry of Intangible Cultural Heritage, part of UNESCO's broader safeguarding efforts. And even now, 2025, gumbo remains a touchstone to Louisiana life and culture. And even though we have a very accurate history of this dish, the debates still go on today. If gumbo has tomato, if it's thickened with filé, if it's thickened with roux, if it's thickened from okra, these fights will go on forever. And here's the thing, everyone is right. Whether you're thickening your gumbo with okra or roux, you're correct. In the beginning, I said that gumbo is the best representation of what the United States is supposed to represent and supposed to be. Gumbo isn't just a delicious dish. It's an edible artifact of history, survival, and culture. Its fusion wasn't a conscious choice by elite chefs, but the inevitable result of diverse people thrown together by colonization, slavery, and exile, forced to feed themselves in a new land with limited resources. They drew upon deep ancestral knowledge, adapted techniques out of sheer necessity, and utilized whatever the local environment provided. The holy trinity of thickeners, okra, filé, and roux, is a unique culinary phenomenon born from this convergence. A dish that is uniquely American, profoundly Louisianan, and a powerful testament to human resilience and the ability to create beauty and community even from the harshest circumstances. That's why gumbo is the ultimate American dish. Its very essence is fusion forged in the fires of necessity and cultural exchange by the hands of immigrants, enslaved people, and Native Americans. And that's why everyone should learn how to cook a gumbo at their house. If you want to check out some of my Yes Chef content, click right there. If you want to check out some of my Thirsty Thursday videos where I make cocktails, click up there. Until next time, I'm Ron, the Professor.